everyone. I'm so glad to have you join me today for a discussion on confidence. I was so pleased to get this invitation, and I'm looking forward to being able to explain to you a bit about my knowledge around confidence. And my hope is that at the end of these 20 minutes, you will walk away with an understanding, at least one practical tool that you can use to build your confidence. So, of course, there are many reasons why people get their confidence affected, but one thing is clear, that there is something you can do about it, and I'm going to explain that in this workshop today. So the first thing I'd like us to think about is how there are actual threats to self-confidence. So yeah, you've asked me here to talk today, so clearly there must have been a reason. These are some of the more common reasons why people say their self-confidence has been affected. So athletes might feel unprepared. Because they're feeling unprepared, it can definitely have an impact on self-confidence. The memory of previous injuries. So, boxing is a very physical sport, and like most contact sports, there's a high risk of injury. And so most of you sitting here today probably do have injuries that you have or haven't recovered from. The memory of those injuries can affect your self-confidence. The next thing that can affect your self-confidence is your fear of disappointing your coaches and fans. So the idea is that, you don't only box for yourself. You box because you would like to make a statement for your fans, because your coach believes in you, and you want to make your coach and perhaps even your family proud. And so the weight of the expectations and the fear of disappointing them can impact confidence. The next thing that can impact confidence is if your imagination gets away with you. And what this could look like is you imagining that your opponent is stronger than you think they are, maybe overestimating them, underestimating yourself, going through all these scenarios in your mind, and actually creating quite a fearful state filled with self-doubt. This can be a threat to self-confidence. Lastly, no one has a perfect record, so we all have memories of previous defeats, or memories of, even if we won, that we didn't win the way we would have liked. And those thoughts about previous defeats can also have an impact on self-confidence. So why is it important to start looking at self-confidence now that I've looked at all these threats? Has anybody been able to relate to any of the threats that I've mentioned here? Do you sit here with those kinds of feelings? Okay, so some people can relate, some of you can relate to some of these fears. Well, let's take a look at why confidence is important. Now, this study noted that almost 90% of high-level athletes believed that they had high levels of confidence, they reported high levels of confidence, and they also had a strong belief in their ability. So it seems that high confidence is actually associated with success, or with having a more elite profile as a performer or as an athlete. So it's a pretty important characteristic to build. And here are some myths about self-confidence. And I'd like us to challenge these myths so that you can start realizing a couple of truths, which I hope will be quite encouraging. So the first myth is that either you have confidence or you don't. Does anybody here relate to that? Have you heard that? Have you seen that? Well, the truth is that confidence is something you can train. It's something you can develop. So it isn't actually either you have it or you don't. And that's isn't that great news? I mean, it means that with some work, and we're going to be looking at that today, you can actually build your confidence. The second myth around confidence is that it's a form of arrogance. And some of us feel like we need to be super boastful or putting ourselves out there in quite a loud way. And the truth is, no, confidence depends on the individual. So you can come up with your own way of wanting to be confident. It doesn't have to be loud. For some, it will be loud, and that's okay. Being outspoken, being kind of combative, particularly in boxing, all the talk that can go on. Not perfectly comfortable. If you're comfortable with that, that's great. But others prefer to have a more silent confidence. They're more quiet, they're more reserved, but they still exude that confidence and that power. And it's up to you to decide which you're more comfortable with. The third myth is that mistakes will knock your confidence. So yes, of course, mistakes can hit you hard. I mean, I mentioned failure in previous matches or games and how that could affect your confidence. But mistakes can also be fuel. They can also be a way that you can learn more about yourself, that you can gain confidence in your skills because you improve. And so it also depends on the way you look at mistakes. Lastly, there's this myth that success makes you more confident. And somehow the more success you have, the more confident you naturally will be. Well, that's also a myth, because in many cases, success actually creates stress, it actually creates pressure. And so with success, you might end up having less confidence because now you're trying to live up to an expectation. So it's not really about deliberately creating success. Do any of you have any questions about this? Okay, so let's go on to the next section. So what is confidence? This is my definition. So this comes from a sports psychology textbook, and it says that confidence is the belief that you have in your ability and the certainty that you have that you're equal to the task at hand. Okay, so it's a belief in your ability and the certainty that you have that you are equal to the task at hand. So confidence can be a choice, a skillful choice. It can be deliberate. And I'm going to talk more now about how to get there. So if we take a look at this, this is the key actually to how you can develop confidence. So you'll see that in this diagram, I have thoughts, I have feelings, and I have actions, and they all go in like a circular fashion. In fact, I could have had the arrows go both directions. So the idea is that your thoughts can change your feelings can change your actions can change your feelings can change your thoughts. So if you make changes to any one of those three, it will impact the others. And this is the secret to building confidence. So what we're going to do in the next part of this workshop is we're actually going to look at how you can change each one of those and how that in turn can lead to improved performance. Okay. So in other words, if you were thinking more confidently, if you're acting more confidently, you would feel more confident, for example. So this is a very interesting study, just in case you were feeling skeptical about this idea that confidence can impact performance and that thoughts and feelings can change actions. Take a look at this. There was a study done where they found that the participants that lifted the most weight when they thought they were lifting less ended up actually carrying the heavier weights. So let me say that again. In a study, participants lifted the most weight when they thought they were lifting less. Let me explain that a bit more. So if you look at this diagram over here, okay, so you had two groups in the study. The first group thought they were carrying heavy weights, when in reality they were carrying light weights. The other group thought that they were carrying light weights, when in reality they were carrying heavy weights. And which was the group that could carry the heavier weights? As I said, the second group. So just because they thought they were carrying lighter, they actually ended up being able to carry more weight. And this for me is a great kind of illustration of the power of your thoughts, right? So just because they thought that it was lighter, they ended up being able to carry more. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So just in summation, get my face out of the way, the key points that I've covered thus far. Okay, we're halfway through the workshop. The key points are, firstly, confidence can be learnt. Secondly, high confidence is associated with more successful athletes. Thirdly, You can create your own version of confidence that is unique to you. And lastly, as I illustrated with the study now, with practice and consistency, you can build your confidence using your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Okay, so let's get to it. We're going to start with how you can change all these things. Firstly, to change your thoughts, here are a couple of things you could do. The first step always is to know yourself. So identifying your negative thinking patterns is going to help you to be able to track them and understand when they're happening, and so then you can do something about them, right? One of the ways you can do this is with a logbook where you just record your thoughts. You could use your phone, an app on your phone, just like notes and record the thoughts. Or actually, if you prefer pen and paper, have a sports journal where you write before and after training, before and after competition, identifying all those negative thought patterns that you have. Specific thoughts, for example, I suck, or I don't have as much power as my opponents. You know, just like, can you think of examples right now of negative thoughts? Yes, that's right. So that's the first step. The second one is to create alternative phrases that you could create that would create the opposite experience. So instead of saying I suck, it could be I am a powerful boxer, right? But you need to kind of almost believe it already. It must seem possible to you. And so you're going to practice taking those negative thoughts and replacing them with positive ones. This does take time. This is a bit of work, and it won't happen very quickly, but it's very well worth the effort, because as you track those negative thoughts, you replace them with positive thoughts. They can change the way you feel. Okay, next slide. So changing your feelings. So with this one, once again, you need to notice your uncomfortable feelings and when they crop up. So you have to have identified them, right? And so in the same way that you recorded your thoughts, you could also just record your emotions, noticing that when you have a particular thought, you have a particular feeling, they might like kind of associate with each other. The second thing you can do then is, and yes, I know it can be quite counterintuitive, it can feel very strange to do this, but the truth is, what you resist persists. And so, with these negative emotions, with these difficult feelings, rather than avoiding them, you could learn to lean into them. So, what that means is you kind of sit with a feeling without reacting to it. And easier said than done, but with skills like meditation, mindfulness, you can learn to not react to your emotions, but rather just notice that they're there. And, you know, if I was going to go into mindfulness as a practice, I could do an entire presentation on that. But even just kind of starting to think about that idea that your feelings are not facts, that you can have a feeling and just be present with it and it will pass by itself, can already be an incredibly empowering thought. Next is to actively create positive feeling states. So what this means is, like with your thoughts, right? Like when you have positive thoughts, it feels good. You can also do this with music. So you could have certain playlists or music that you like to listen to that actually creates that positive feeling for you. Or you could have a video highlight list. So there could be some of your own performances. So, you know, if you have a recording or like a video, a YouTube video selection of some of your own great performances, moments that you're really proud of, if you put that together and you actually watch it and you allow yourself to feel it, that can shift to a positive feeling. If you feel like you don't have enough of your own examples, you could even get a selection of some of your mentors or some of the great fight scenes that you admire so much and put that together and use that as encouragement and motivation, and also to help you to see what's possible, right? And start seeing, oh wow, I could actually do those things too, and build your confidence. And then we get to changing your behaviors. Now, changing your behaviors is really around, firstly and foremost, is to always be prepared. So preparation, the more prepared you feel, the more you will be able to feel like you can perform at your best. And so, for example, it could be being prepared for your training. It doesn't have to just be in a fight. It could be being prepared for a training, being present and deliberate while you're training, making great notes after your training. Same with your fights. Preparing really well for your fights, researching your opponent, knowing what their strengths and their weaknesses are, feeling like you have a very clear game and strategy set up. And also, of course, feeling mentally prepared, using some of those mental training skills that we'll be working on as we go along. And the second thing you can do is change your body language. And this is actually what I'm going to be using today. So I'm going to be talking about that in a little while, and I'm going to be expanding on that with our activity. But the idea is that if you can change the way your body poses, you can actually change the way you feel. And so you can improve your confidence. The third thing you can do is set attainable goals. So what this means is, instead of having these huge goals, have smaller ones. Gain a sense of mastery. So as you succeed at these smaller goals, you'll start to feel more and more confident. And with that confidence, you will then build on it, and it'll become this wonderful foundation for even more self-confidence. And it doesn't matter if you're succeeding if you're not noticing it. So the last point is to notice your successes. Write them down. Have a record for yourself. It could be like a self-esteem list, a confidence list of all your greatest victories, the moments where you thought you were at your greatest skill. It doesn't necessarily have to be about beating an opponent. It could just be the way you feel about yourself and your own skills and how far you've come. And creating a list like that can be a great reminder of what you can do and what you're capable of. Okay, so now it's time for our activity. So you'll see that you do actually have a handout in front of you. I've sent that to you. So you can follow along in the handout. You can make notes in the handout if you'd like. But I'm going to talk you through it now in these last few moments of our session. Okay, so here we are. Let me just get my face out of the way. So what we're going to do first is, I would like you to come up with a person, character, or object that you associate with having a deep sense of confidence. So this could be a superhero, this could be a mentor, someone you really look up to in the boxing world. It could even be an inanimate object. So it could be a tornado or a hurricane or an earthquake, a volcano. But the important thing is that you associate that thing with a deep sense of confidence. Okay, so now we're going to get to the active part. Has everybody got some idea? It doesn't have to be perfect. What I'd like you to do now is to use your body language. Right now, stand up and use your body language to create that feeling of being that person, character, or object. So for example, you could like sit with your hands on your hips and kind of have that superwoman pose, for example. So play around with what works for you. How does it feel to embody that person, character, or object? So it's about, working on it, reworking it until you really do feel that confidence or that pose. And for added power, what I'd like you to do now is come up with a word or phrase that captures that for you, that feeling for you. What could that word be? For example, if you're imagining that you're a volcano, you could say, I'm on fire, I'm explosive. And so what I would like you to do is combine your body pose, the word, and the feeling together to create that feeling. And of course, the other thing is, bonus tip, add a soundtrack. Why not? So if you add music, it could even more build the feeling that you're trying to create. So here are some examples for you in case you're needing some examples. Get my face out the way. Some examples of what those poses could look like. Next steps. Okay, so you have your handout. Please take a look at it. Let me know if you have any questions. In fact, if there are any questions right now, please type them in the chat. If you would like me to expand on anything, I'm happy to wait here for a little bit and take any questions that you might have. Okay, great. So just to leave you these last few minutes, I want to leave you with a quote. Okay, and this quote is from Layla Ali, who is Muhammad Ali's daughter. And she says, impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. And I love that because you might at the moment feel like you have very little confidence. And I would like you to use this quote as a reminder that that is just an opinion. It's not a fact. And if you use some of the skills that we spoke about today, you could really build your confidence. So with that, thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you have any questions, I will hang around afterwards. It was great chatting to you, and I am so excited to help to support you to build your confidence.